Welcome to Tech with Kaushik. This is part 2 of our complete practice question series for the SC-100 Microsoft Cybersecurity Architect Expert exam. Choose your answer before the timer ends. Then review the correct answer, explanation, and exam tip. Let us begin part 2. For Statement 1, the correct selection is private endpoints. Private endpoints expose the applications through private IP addresses reachable from the connected data center. For Statement 2, the correct selection is network security groups, NSGs. NSG rules can allow only the designated server addresses when private endpoint network policy support is enabled. Exam tip: private endpoints provide private connectivity. NSGs filter network traffic, while app service public access restrictions do not govern private endpoint traffic. Question number 41. Scenario: a development organization already uses GitHub team for public and private Node.js repositories. The DevSecOps architecture must scan application code in the private repositories and automatically propose dependency upgrades when known vulnerabilities are detected. Complete each recommendation by selecting the appropriate GitHub capability. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. To perform vulnerability-focused code scanning in licensed private repositories, enable the blank. The choices for Statement 1 are GitHub Secret Protection, GitHub Codespaces, or GitHub Code Security. Statement 2. To automatically create pull requests that upgrade vulnerable dependencies, enable the blank. The choices for Statement 2 are Dependabot Alerts, Dependency Review, or Dependabot Security Updates. For Statement 1, the correct selection is GitHub Code Security. Code Security provides vulnerability-oriented code scanning for eligible private repositories. For Statement 2, the correct selection is Dependabot Security Updates. Dependabot Security Updates proposes patched dependency versions through automated pull requests. Exam tip: code scanning examines application code, while Dependabot Security Updates remediate vulnerabilities in software dependencies. Question number 42. Scenario: a financial organization operates Windows Server virtual machines that host different business applications. The endpoint security architecture must permit only explicitly approved executables, scripts, installers, and libraries. Newly discovered software must remain blocked until the security team authorizes it. Which security control should the cybersecurity architect recommend? The available options are as follows. Option A: anomaly detection policies in Microsoft Defender for cloud apps. Option B: app control for business policies managed through Microsoft Intune. Option C: Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark Compliance Assessments. Option D: Microsoft Intra-Application Registrations. The correct answer is Option B, App Control for Business Policies Managed through Microsoft Intune. Here's why. App Control for Business enforces an application allow listing model that controls which executable files, scripts, installers, packaged applications, and libraries may run. Intune can centrally deploy and manage these policies across supported Windows devices. Why are the other options not correct? A detects anomalous cloud app behavior, but does not enforce code execution on servers. C assesses configuration compliance without providing application allow listing. D represents applications in Microsoft Intra ID and does not authorize local executable files. Exam tip: use app control for business when the requirement is to permit only trusted code. Use Defender protections to detect and respond to malicious behavior. The correct answer is option C, App Control for Business Enforcement Policies. Here's why. App Control for Business provides an enforceable application control architecture for Windows. Policies define which applications and drivers are trusted and prevent unauthorized code from running. Why are the other options not correct? A. Defender for Cloud Adaptive Application Controls analyze running software, recommend known safe applications, and surface deviations. But App Control for Business is the direct Windows enforcement control for the stated allow listing requirement. B. Conditional Access App Control governs cloud application sessions rather than local code execution. D. App Discovery policies detect cloud app usage and do not block Windows applications. Exam tip. Use App Control for Business when the decisive requirement is to enforce which code can execute on Windows. Question number 44. Scenario. A Microsoft 365 security operations team must monitor identity compromise risk and abnormal activity involving collaboration data. Map each Microsoft security capability to the activity it should monitor. Two capabilities will not be used. The available source items are as follows. Source item 1, Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. Source item 2, Microsoft Intra ID Protection. Source item 3, Microsoft Purview Data Loss Prevention. Source item 4, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. The destination requirements are as follows. Destination A, identify user identities that may have been compromised. Destination B, detect anomalous high-volume downloads from SharePoint Online. The first correct mapping is Microsoft Intra ID Protection, mapped to identify user identities that may have been compromised. The second correct mapping is Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, mapped to detect anomalous high-volume downloads from SharePoint Online. Here's why. ID protection evaluates signals associated with compromised identities and risky user behavior. Defender for Cloud Apps analyzes cloud app activity and provides anomaly detections for behaviors such as unusual or high-volume downloads. Exam tip. Use ID protection for identity risk and Defender for Cloud Apps for behavioral analytics and governance of SaaS activity. Question number 45. Scenario. A construction company uses Microsoft Intra Entitlement Management to give employees of a partner organization access to project resources. Partner users must request access through access packages without administrators manually creating each guest account. Business owners who are not tenant administrators must be able to create and manage the packages for resources delegated to them. Complete each identity governance recommendation. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. To delegate access package creation to business owners. Organize the applicable resources in the blank. The choices for Statement 1 are administrative units, catalogs, or programs. Statement 2. To identify the partner tenant as an approved source of external requesters, configure the blank. The choices for Statement 2 are an identity provider, a connected organization, or an external organization. For Statement 1, the correct selection is catalogs. Catalog ownership delegates management of the catalog's resources and access packages. For Statement 2, the correct selection is a connected organization. A connected organization defines the external population permitted to request the access packages. Exam tip. Use connected organizations to define external requesters and catalogs to delegate access package ownership. Question number 046. Scenario. Your organization's Security Operations Center, SOC, is adopting Microsoft Security Copilot to accelerate incident response. Tier 1 analysts frequently need to perform the exact same sequence of investigative queries whenever a suspected phishing incident occurs. Tier 3 analysts need an AI-assisted environment to reverse engineer obfuscated PowerShell scripts found during threat hunting. Complete the Security Copilot architecture by selecting the most appropriate capability. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. To automate a predefined sequence of natural language prompts for the Tier 1 analysts to investigate phishing, create the blank. The choices for Statement 1 are Security Copilot prompt books, Microsoft Sentinel playbooks, or Logic apps. Statement 2. To provide Tier 3 analysts a dedicated conversational interface for script analysis and threat hunting, use the blank. The choices for Statement 2 are Security Copilot Standalone Experience, Microsoft Defender XD or Device Timeline, or Azure OpenAI Service. Question number 47. Scenario. An enterprise operates Windows Server and Linux machines in its on-premises data centers. The machines must be assessed and patched from Azure by using the current Microsoft Update Management architecture. Complete the hybrid update management design. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. To assess update compliance and schedule patch deployments, use the blank. The choices for Statement 1 are Azure Automation Update Management, Azure Update Manager, Microsoft Sentinel, or Microsoft Defender for servers. Statement 2. To connect each on-premises machine to the Azure control plane, install the blank. The choices for Statement 2 are the Log Analytics Agent, the Azure Connected Machine Agent, or the Azure Monitor Agent. For Statement 1, the correct selection is Azure Update Manager. Update Manager provides centralized assessment, reporting. Question number 48. Scenario. A company has several Azure subscriptions with hundreds of Azure or BAC assignments. The security team must identify identities whose assigned roles have not been used during the previous 90 days so that unnecessary permissions can be removed with minimal manual analysis. Which capability should the Cybersecurity Architect recommend? The available options are as follows. Option A, Microsoft Intra-Privileged Identity Management Role Settings. Option B, Microsoft Defender External Attack Surface Management. Option C, Microsoft Defender for Cloud CIEM Recommendations. Option D, Microsoft Intra-Access Reviews for Microsoft 365 Groups. The correct answer is Option C, Microsoft Defender for Cloud CIEM Recommendations. Here's why. Defender for Cloud provides native cloud infrastructure entitlement management recommendations. Its inactivity analysis evaluates and used role assignments over a 90-day look-back window and identifies identities whose unnecessary access should be remediated. Why are the other options not correct? APIM governs privileged role eligibility and activation, but does not provide the required environment-wide and used assignment analytics. B. Defender EASM discovers externally exposed assets rather than cloud entitlements. D. Group access reviews do not analyze Azure or BAC usage across subscriptions. Exam tip. Use Defender for Cloud CIEM for activity-based cloud permission analysis. Use PIM for controlled privileged role activation. Question number 49. Scenario. An organization stores documents in Azure Blob Storage and provides departmental file shares through Azure Files. Temporary blob access must be authorized by Microsoft Entra credentials. Users must access the file shares through SMB by using domain identities. Complete the authorization design. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. For limited duration access to individual blob resources with Microsoft Entra-backed authorization, issue the blank. The choices for Statement 1 are Account Shared Access Signatures, SAS, Service Shared Access Signatures, SAS, User Delegation Shared Access Signatures, SAS, or Microsoft Entra Domain Services. Statement 2. For identity-based SMB access to the Azure file shares through a managed domain, use the blank. The choices for Statement 2 are Service Shared Access Signatures, SAS, Microsoft Entra Domain Services, User Delegation Shared Access Signatures, SAS, or Account Shared Access Signatures, SAS. Question number 50. Scenario. A company routes Microsoft 365 traffic through Microsoft Entra Internet Access. The Microsoft 365 traffic profile is enabled, and a linked conditional access policy applies compliant network evaluation with continuous access evaluation to all users and assigned devices. Which workloads can respond to continuous access evaluation for the protected Microsoft 365 sessions? The available options are as follows. Option A, Exchange Online only. Option B, SharePoint Online only. Option C, both SharePoint Online and Exchange Online. Question number 51. Scenario. A security architecture team must examine privileged identities across multiple Azure subscriptions. The solution must map each identity to the resources it can access and identify over-provisioned permissions, inactive assignments, and privilege escalation paths. Which capabilities should the architect include in the design? The available options are as follows. Option A, Microsoft Defender External Attack Surface Management Discovery. Option B, Microsoft Entra Access Reviews for Directory Groups. Option C, Microsoft Defender for Cloud CEM with Cloud Security Explorer. Option D, Microsoft Entra Privileged Identity Management Activation History. The correct answer is option C, Microsoft Defender for Cloud CIEM with Cloud Security Explorer. Here's why. Defender for Cloud CIEM maps identities, permissions, and accessible resources. Cloud Security Explorer supports entitlement queries, while recommendations and attack path analysis identify inactive identities, excessive privileges, and high-impact lateral movement risks. Why are the other options not correct? A. Defender ESM provides outside-in discovery of internet-facing assets. B. Identity Governance Access reviews periodically recertify assigned access, but do not provide a complete entitlement and attack path map. DPIM activation history covers privileged role use, but not all resource entitlements and associated cloud risks. Exam tip. CIEM analyzes effective cloud permissions and their risk context. Access reviews and PIM govern narrower access lifecycle processes. The correct answer is option A, Microsoft Defender for Identity. Here's why. Defender for Identity monitors on-premises Active Directory signals, supports identification of sensitive users and groups, and detects suspicious changes involving high-value directory entities. Its alerts can be integrated into Unified Security Operations and Microsoft Sentinel. Why are the other options not correct? B assesses Microsoft intra-identity risk rather than changes to an on-premises ADDS group. C governs privileged role activation, but is not the ADDS threat sensor. D protects email and collaboration workloads rather than monitoring directory group modifications. Exam tip. Use Defender for Identity for behavioral detection and sensitive entity monitoring in ADDS environments. Question number 53. Scenario. An application team uses Azure repos and Azure pipelines. The cybersecurity architect must place code-focused and runtime-focused vulnerability testing at the appropriate stages of the secure delivery lifecycle. Complete each DevSecretary Ops recommendation. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. During the build and test stage, assess the behavior of a running application by using the blank. The choices for Statement 1 are Static Application Security Testing, SAST, Dynamic Application Security Testing, DSD, smoke testing, or penetration testing. Statement 2. During the commit the code stage, inspect source code for insecure patterns by using the blank. The choices for Statement 2 are Dynamic Application Security Testing, DSD, smoke testing, Static Application Security Testing, SCSD, or penetration testing. For Statement 1, the correct selection is Dynamic Application Security Testing, DSD. DSD requires an executable application and tests externally observable runtime behavior. For Statement 2, the correct selection is Static Application Security Testing, SCSD. SCSD analyzes code without executing the application and supports early developer feedback. Exam tip. SCSD shifts code analysis left. DSD evaluates the attack surface of a running application. Question number 54. Scenario. An organization is implementing privileged access devices according to Microsoft Rapid Modernization Guidance. Members of a security administration group will receive dedicated Windows devices for performing cloud administrative work. A separate endpoint team is responsible for maintaining those devices. The privileged users do not require local operating system administration to perform their cloud roles. How should membership of the local administrators group be designed according to least privilege? The available options are as follows. Option A. Add only the endpoint management group to the local administrators group. Option B. Configure Windows Lapse in legacy Microsoft Lapse emulation mode. Option C. Add the endpoint management group and each assigned privileged user to the local administrators group. The correct answer is option A. Add only the endpoint management group to the local administrators group. Here's why. The endpoint management group requires local administrative rights to maintain the privileged devices. The cloud security administrators do not require local administrator access to perform their assigned Microsoft Intra role, so granting it would violate least privilege. Why are the other options not correct? B addresses rotation of local administrator passwords, but does not define who should receive local administrative membership. C unnecessarily grants each privileged cloud administrator a second privilege on the local device. Exam tip. A privileged cloud role does not automatically justify local administrator rights on the administrative workstation used to perform that role. Question number 55. Scenario. A company protects on-premises Windows workloads by using Microsoft Azure Backup Server and a recovery services vault. The ransomware resilience strategy must add Azure-controlled verification before a local administrator can perform supported critical operations that stop protection and delete online backup data. Which Azure Backup Security Control should the architect recommend? The available options are as follows. Option A, multi-user authorization through Azure Resource Guard. Option B, a security pin for critical operations. Option C, an eligible backup contributor assignment in Microsoft Intra PIM. Option D, registration of Microsoft Azure Backup Server with another vault. The correct answer is option B, a security pin for critical operations. Here's why. Azure Backup requires an Azure-generated security pin for supported critical hybrid backup operations, including stopping protection with deletion of online backup data from MABS-protected workloads. This adds verification outside the locally compromised administrator context. Why are the other options not correct? A protects designated vault operations through separation of duties, but is not the specific hybrid backup pin control described. C changes Azure role activation and does not protect local MABS operations. D is a normal protection prerequisite rather than an additional safeguard. Exam tip. For hybrid Azure backup, distinguish security pin verification from resource guard multi-user authorization. They protect different operational paths. Question number 56. Scenario. An enterprise is deploying one platform landing zone for shared connectivity and management services and several application landing zones for separate workloads. The architecture must follow Cloud Adoption Framework separation of responsibility guidance. Which resource should normally be deployed separately within each application landing zone rather than centralized in the shared platform landing zone? The available options are as follows. Option A, Azure Firewall. Option B, Azure Virtual Network Gateway. Option C, Azure Private DNS Zone. Option D, Azure Key Vault. The correct answer is option D, Azure Key Vault. Here's why. A workload-specific key vault normally belongs within the application landing zone and its ownership boundary. Shared connectivity resources such as firewalls, gateways, and centralized private DNS are commonly placed in the platform landing zone. Why are the other options not correct? A, B, and C provide shared connectivity or name resolution capabilities that are commonly centralized for reuse and governance by the platform team. Exam tip. Place shared identity, connectivity, and management services in platform landing zones. Place workload-owned resources in application landing zones. Question number 57. Scenario. An organization is prioritizing 3 Zero Trust initiatives. Its most urgent business risk is the inability to restore critical services after ransomware. After recovery readiness is established, the organization must eliminate implicit trust from workforce access. Persistent protection for sensitive information will be implemented after the Access Control Foundation is operating. Select the 3 relevant initiatives and arrange them in the order required by the organization's risk priorities. The available items are as follows. Item 1. Classify and protect sensitive organizational data. Item 2. Discover and protect unmanaged IoT devices. Item 3. Establish tested ransomware recovery readiness. Item 4. Integrate zero trust controls into DevOps workflows. Item 5. Explicitly validate every workforce access request. The correct sequence is as follows. First, establish tested ransomware recovery readiness. Second, explicitly validate every workforce access request. Third, classify and protect sensitive organizational data. Here's why. The sequence follows the scenario's stated business priorities. Recovery readiness addresses the immediate risk of operational loss. Explicit validation then establishes the identity and access control foundation. Data classification and protection subsequently apply persistent controls to sensitive information. Exam tip. Zero Trust priorities should follow business impact and dependencies rather than treating every security pillar as equally urgent. Question number 59. Scenario. A Microsoft Sentinel deployment contains many analytics rules. The security team wants to invoke a common playbook without configuring every analytics rule separately. The orchestration mechanism must support an expiration date and pass complete case information to the playbook. Complete the SOAR design. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. To invoke the playbook centrally and configure an expiration date for the orchestration logic, use the blank. The choices for Statement 1 are analytics rules, automation rules, or investigation graphs. Statement 2. To provide the playbook with the alerts and entities associated with the Sentinel case, use in the blank. The choices for Statement 2 are alert trigger, entity trigger, or incident trigger. For Statement 1, the correct selection is directory readers. Guest administrators need directory read access to discover and work with the scoped objects. For Statement 2, the correct selection is an administrative unit. The administrative unit creates the directory scope for supported role assignments. For Statement 3, the correct selection is password administrator. Password administrator grants the required reset capability without the broader permissions of help desk administrator. Exam tip: combine a narrowly scoped administrative unit with the least privileged built-in role. External administrators may also require tenant-level directory visibility. Question number 61. Scenario: a company must collect selected Windows security events from on-premises Hyper-V guest servers into Microsoft Sentinel. The design will use the Windows security events via AMA connector, minimize ingestion volume, and manage the non-Azure servers through Azure. Complete the logging architecture. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. Define the required event identifiers, collection filters, and destination workspace by creating the blank. The choices for Statement 1 are Azure Monitor Data Collection Endpoints, Azure Monitor Data Collection Rules, DCRs, or Microsoft Defender for Cloud Data Collection Settings. Statement 2. Before Azure Monitor Agent can be deployed as an extension to the non-Azure servers, install the blank. The choices for Statement 2 are the Log Analytics Agent, the Azure Connected Machine Agent for Azure Arc-enabled servers, or the VM Insights Map Dependency Agent. For Statement 1, the correct selection is Azure Monitor Data Collection Rules, DCRs. DCRs define the data source, filtering configuration, and destination for AMA collection. For Statement 2, the correct selection is the Azure Connected Machine Agent for Azure Arc-enabled servers. The Connected Machine Agent projects each on-premises server into Azure as an Arc-enabled resource. Exam tip: Azure Arc provides the management connection for non-Azure servers. Azure Monitor Agent and DCRs provide the telemetry collection configuration. Question number 62. Scenario: a holding company operates 3 independently governed subsidiaries. Each subsidiary uses a separate Microsoft intratenant and Microsoft 365 tenant. A central security analyst works from a 4th tenant. The organization will retain each subsidiary's security data within its own tenant, while providing centralized Microsoft Sentinel monitoring with minimal repeated administration. Complete the architecture recommendations. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. The minimum number of Microsoft Sentinel workspaces required for the 3 monitored tenants is the blank. The choices for Statement 1 are 4, 2, 3, or 1. Statement 2. To delegate cross-tenant monitoring and management to the central security tenant, use the blank. The choices for Statement 2 are Azure Arc, Azure Lighthouse, Azure Private Link, or Azure Bastion. For Statement 1, the correct selection is 3. 1 workspace is required in each of the 3 monitored tenants. For Statement 2, the correct selection is Azure Lighthouse. Azure Lighthouse provides scalable cross-tenant management of Microsoft Sentinel workspaces. Exam tip: use separate Sentinel workspaces for tenant isolation and Azure Lighthouse for cross-tenant SOC operations. Question number 63. Scenario: a legal services company issues Microsoft intra-joined Windows 11 laptops to employees. Employees remain standard users. Help desk engineers sometimes control an employee's active session and must launch a support utility with administrative rights without changing the employee into a local administrator. Which capability should the Cybersecurity Architect recommend? The available options are as follows. Option A, Microsoft Intra-Privileged Identity Management. Option B, Microsoft Intune Endpoint Privilege Management. Option C, Windows Local Administrator Password Solution. Option D, Microsoft Defender for Cloud Permissions Management. The correct answer is Option B, Microsoft Intune Endpoint Privilege Management. Here's why. Endpoint Privilege Management lets standard users run approved applications with elevated rights under controlled, auditable rules without granting persistent local administrator membership. Why are the other options not correct? A. Microsoft Intra PIM governs privileged directory and Azure role activation, not application elevation inside a user's Windows session. C. Windows Labs protects and rotates local administrator passwords, but does not provide policy-based per application elevation for standard users. D. Defender for Cloud Permissions Management evaluates cloud entitlements and does not elevate local Windows applications. Exam tip. Use endpoint privilege management for controlled application elevation. Use LAPS to protect local administrator credentials. Question number 64. Scenario. A research organization manages its Microsoft 365 identities separately from its endpoint platform. Windows devices are enrolled in Microsoft Intune and integrated with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. The organization must deny Microsoft 365 access when device encryption is not enabled. Complete the control design for the identity team and the endpoint team. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate option from its drop-down list. Statement 1. The identity team should enforce access by using the blank. The choices for Statement 1 are a Microsoft Intra-Conditional Access Policy, a User Risk Policy, Microsoft Defender for Office 365, or a Sign-in Risk Policy. Statement 2. The endpoint team should evaluate encryption status by using the blank. The choices for Statement 2 are an Intune Compliance Policy, an Intune Configuration Profile, a Defender for Endpoint ASR Rule, or an Intune Endpoint Security Policy. For Statement 1, the correct selection is a Microsoft Intra-Conditional Access Policy. Conditional access makes the access decision by using device compliance as a condition. For Statement 2, the correct selection is an Intune Compliance Policy. A compliance policy can mark a device non-compliant when required encryption is absent. Exam tip. Use Intune Compliance to measure device state and conditional access to enforce resource access. Question number 66. Scenario. A consulting firm classifies documents with Microsoft Purview sensitivity labels. Users work on Windows 11 endpoints that are onboarded to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and the documents are synchronized through OneDrive. The firm must block users from uploading labeled documents to unapproved external websites. Which capability should the data security architecture include? The available options are as follows. Option A. Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Web Content Filtering. Option B. Microsoft Purview Information Protection. Option C. Microsoft Purview Data Loss Prevention. Option D. An Intune Endpoint Security Policy. The correct answer is option B, Azure Storage Firewall IP Network Rules. Here's why. Storage Firewall IP rules can allow the known public IP addresses of the studios and deny other public network sources without requiring additional network infrastructure. Why are the other options not correct? A. Azure Private Link provides private connectivity, but adds private endpoint and network integration requirements that are unnecessary for fixed public IP allow listing. C. Azure Firewall would introduce a separate managed firewall and additional cost. D. NSGS filter traffic for virtual network interfaces and subnets. They are not the access control boundary for a storage account public endpoint. Exam tip. For low-cost access from known on-premises public IP addresses, use the storage account firewall. For statement 1, the correct selection is private endpoints. A private endpoint removes the need to expose the app service inbound endpoint publicly. For statement 2, the correct selection is virtual network integration. VNet integration enables the app service application to reach the VM over private virtual network routing. Exam tip. For app service, private endpoint is inbound and virtual network integration is outbound. Question number 73. Scenario. A healthcare organization publishes an ADDS integrated web application through Microsoft Intra-Private Access. A Windows Server host in a perimeter network runs the private network connector, and Kerberos constrained delegation provides single sign-on. The server currently has these firewall rules. A. Allow inbound TCP 443 from Microsoft Cloud endpoints. B. Allow outbound TCP 443 to required Microsoft endpoints. C. Allow outbound TCP 80 to required certificate and service endpoints. D. Allow outbound TCP 389 to the domain controllers. Which rule should the architect remove to reduce exposure without disrupting the connector or Kerberos single sign-on? The available options are as follows. Option A, Rule A. Option B, Rule D. Option C, Rule B. Option D, Rule C. The correct answer is Option A, Rule A. Here's why. Microsoft Intra-Private Network connectors initiate outbound connections and do not require unsolicited inbound TCP 443 from Microsoft Cloud endpoints. Removing the inbound rule reduces the connector host's attack surface. Why are the other options not correct? B. Outbound TCP 389 to domain controllers supports directory communication required for the Kerberos constrained delegation design. C. Outbound TCP 443 is required for the connector to communicate with Microsoft services. D. Outbound TCP 80 can be required for certificate revocation checks and designated service endpoints. Exam tip. Private network connectors are outbound only. Avoid opening inbound internet paths to connector hosts. Question number 74. Scenario. An enterprise operates workloads in Azure, Amazon Web Services, and Google Cloud. Its security team must inventory effective permissions, identify excessive entitlements, and review cloud role assignments from a unified multi-cloud posture management service. Which capability should the architect recommend? The available options are as follows. Option A, Microsoft Intra ID Governance. Option B, Azure Lighthouse. Option C, Microsoft Defender for Cloud Permissions Management. Option D, Microsoft Defender for Identity. The correct answer is Option C, Microsoft Defender for Cloud Permissions Management. Here's why. Defender for Cloud provides multi-cloud cloud infrastructure entitlement management capabilities that assess identities, effective permissions, excessive access, and role assignments across supported Azure, AWS, and GCP environments. Why are the other options not correct? A. Microsoft Intra ID Governance manages identity lifecycle, entitlement packages, and access reviews, but is not the multi-cloud CIEM service for cloud control plane permissions. B. Azure Lighthouse delegates management across Azure tenants and does not analyze AWS or GCP entitlements. D. Microsoft Defender for Identity detects identity threats in ADDS environments and does not inventory multi-cloud role permissions. Exam tip. Use Defender for Cloud Permissions Management for multi-cloud entitlement analysis and least privilege remediation. Question number 75. Scenario. Two Microsoft intra-organizations are creating shared Microsoft Teams channels for a joint engineering program. Partner users must remain governed in their home tenant, use their existing credentials for single sign-on, and access only the shared channel resources without guest account provisioning in the resource tenant. Which external identity model should the architect recommend? The available options are as follows. Option A, Microsoft Intra B2B collaboration. Option B, cross-tenant synchronization. Option C, Microsoft Intra B2B Direct Connect. Option D, Microsoft Intra Connect Sync. Question number 76. Scenario. A regulated Azure environment uses Azure Bastion for administrative access to virtual machines. Individual teams manage their own network security groups, creating a risk that an NSG rule could reopen direct or DP access. The central platform team requires an organization-wide deny control that downstream NSG owners cannot override. Which capability should the architect include? The available options are as follows. Option A, Azure Firewall Application Rules. Option B, Azure Virtual Network Manager Connectivity Configurations. Option C, Azure Firewall Network Rules. Option D, Azure Virtual Network Manager Security Admin Rules. The correct answer is option D, Azure Virtual Network Manager Security Admin Rules. Here's why. Security admin deny rules establish centrally governed network policy that is evaluated before NSG rules, preventing downstream NSG owners from overriding the required block on direct or DP access. Why are the other options not correct? A. Azure Firewall Application Rules filter application layer destinations and do not create an unoverridable control over distributed NSG rules. B. Connectivity configurations define network topology and connectivity groups, not mandatory traffic deny policy. C. Azure Firewall Network Rules apply only to traffic routed through the firewall and do not prevent an NSG from allowing a direct path that bypasses it. Exam tip. Use Virtual Network Manager Security Admin Rules for centrally enforced network guardrails above NSGS.